right, welcome everyone to Friday 15 with Master B2B. My name is Brian Beck. I'm here with Andy Hoare. Andy, happy Friday to you. We got an exciting session and a special guest today.
You look like you're spinning the hits there. Are you
I am, man.
DJing
I'm spinning the
someplace?
hits. That's right. Well, I'm in beautiful sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, and here we have just had an Amazon B2B summit yesterday here with my company in Seba. So I had a really great event. About 80 people were here, and really a lot of our community members actually, Andy, were here, and so it was great to see them. And yeah, so I am broadcasting. I'm spinning the tunes from Scottsdale at the Fairmont in Scottsdale. Really cool place, but anyway, so pardon my space age headphones here. I want to make sure that
Well,
the audio comes through.
speaking of that, this is not our breaking news, but I was struck by this. You probably saw it too, that Amazon this week announced their earnings and their sales from last year, and they
Oh yeah,
passed Walmart
yeah, yeah.
for the largest, most company revenue of any company in the United States of America. It's like 716 billion. They just passed Walmart, so they are now the highest revenue company in the United States of America.
It's amazing. And what's fascinating, Andy, they also announced $200 billion in investment in AI, and the stock tanked. It tanked. It was under $200 a share until 2 days ago, and it's crazy. But people are very skeptical. They're worried about, and I think it's just investors being short term. That's all I think it is. I'll be
I
honest
remember
with you.
back in the day, when I was living in Silicon Valley, I remember people laughing at Amazon. I said to a friend of mine like in 1998 or something, I said,
Right.
Walmart should buy Amazon. And they're like, Amazon? Now Amazon's worth more than Walmart. Amazon has more revenue than Walmart. It's always been worth
It's
more. And
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's interesting. So yeah, we could do a whole podcast just on that. But let's get into our topic today, our Friday 15, and of course, as usual, we need to start with our breaking news. Andy, did you see this? Genuine Parts is going to separate Motion and Napa into two public companies. Saw this on MDM this week. This is a big deal. This is a 24 billion. These two companies together, $24 billion, and Genuine Parts has decided to set them out in their own public companies, two separate companies. What's your take on this?
yeah, it's not a new story. It's an activist investor who sees the whole as worth less than the sum of the parts, break it up, drive them down two different paths. We were talking earlier that, it used to be about efficiencies. Put these companies together, lay off, the operational efficiency part, but software has resolved a lot of that. AI is increasingly resolving that. So there's really not, unless they're channel synergies, this back
Right.
office stuff, not as compelling as it used to be. And, just people getting distracted. That's another issue is that, you have them people serving multiple different companies. And we were joking
Right.
prior to this that I've heard this dozens of times in my 15, 16 years covering this, that B2B companies will just acquire an adjacent company in an adjacent space. And then after 20 years of that, they look around and go, wait a minute, the last company we acquired now competes with the first company we ever were because there
Right.
was no method to this madness. And though
That's right.
now like PE firms, activist investors are coming in going, no, guys, this is over, break it up and let's move on. So this is an example of it. So we'll see what happens.
Until the next cycle, in which case the PE firms make money by combining companies, in which case that then the research shows that it's better to combine, right? So
I think,
fascinating.
yes, you're right. But I do think we've hit a different notion. I think speed is more important than size now.
Yeah.
And channels and distribution matter. We talked about this last week. Look at Google and Gemini, the advantage
Right.
that Gemini has, because every time I log into my Gmail account, it's right there versus ChatGPT. I have to go to ChatGPT. So they don't have the same distribution. So
Right.
distribution economies of scale will always matter. But if that's not the case here, if these are two different markets and they are,
Right.
industrial is different from automotive, then if you don't have that channel synergy and economies of scale, then what exactly are you getting
Yeah.
out of this
Yeah.
combination?
Yeah. Yeah. The two entities are better off on their own. They'll be higher enterprise values on their own rather than together. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's fascinating, and we'll continue to watch that. And now, Andy, before we jump into our topic today, I want to remind everyone that we have our summit coming up in just a few weeks at the University of Chicago, March 10th and 11th. This is going to be a fabulous event. We're doing 2 days this year. I think we're like 98% full at this point. So, folks, if you have any interest in joining us, go to our website, masterb2b.com, and look for Summit under events, and you can apply to attend. But yeah, this is going to be fabulous. In fact, today we're going to be previewing one of the topics we're going to be talking about at the summit. We've been doing that the last few weeks on Friday 15. And our topic, of course, is all about AI. In fact, we're going to talk about measuring the ROI of AI and how hard it is for folks to identify things that actually generate returns. Here's the sad state of affairs, Andy, in B2B, right? The brutal reality is that 80% failure rate. AI projects are 2 times more likely to fail than traditional IT projects, according to Rand Corp. Only 5% of enterprise AI pilots currently deliver a measurable impact, and the 12% scaling rate, just 1 in 10 proof of concepts ever reach full scale production. It is not working. So is that okay? Is really the question. And why are they failing? Well, here's some additional data. Data unreadiness, 60%. Gardner predicts 60% of projects fail because the data isn't ready, isn't AI ready. It's too noisy, it's too siloed. The black box trust gap, 51% of organizations have stalled deployments because of hallucinations, inaccurate outputs. I mean, we've seen this ourselves, right, Andy? And then the hype
Yeah.
trap, 30% of Gen AI projects are abandoned post proof of concept due to escalating costs. The bottom line, 40% of agentic AI projects will be canceled by 2027, according to Gartner. This, in any tradition, by any traditional measure, Andy, this is dismal, right?
Yeah, well, I think there's a multi-dimensional story here. There isn't just one thing, but I have contended this before. You have talked about this before. When you come across a new technology, you have to
Yeah,
think in a new way.
yeah,
And this isn't a standard technology where you're replacing capital for labor, like we learned in Econ 101.
right.
Instead of having a person do this, we're going to have a tool do it. That's not what's going on here, because this actually, the AI is replacing human cognition in some ways, and it enables things that are very different. We've talked about this before, the steam engine analogy, where industrial revolution, steam engine, people brought in electric motors. It
Yeah,
made no difference. It took 30 years for companies to figure out they got to change how they approach things. And when they did, we got the assembly line, and nobody's ever gone back to the steam engine. So, but for 30 years, people didn't change their behaviors. They just thought about things in the same way. And this feels eerily similar to that for companies that are rethinking processes,
yeah,
they're going to benefit orders of magnitude more than others. But that's the hardest part, because we all know that everything in B2B comes down to one thing: change management. And if people show up every day and do the same thing, and they come on and say, hey, do this differently, they'll discover it didn't work, because why? It didn't fit into the way they were doing things. So
right, right, right. It's all about
that's what we've
practice.
seen a lot of this. The other
Yeah, it's
story is the data story,
yes, big
which
time.
is, you can change your processes all you want, and you have to, but if your data's crap, it's garbage in, garbage out. And so until they fix that, but that comes back to a change of processes, because you and I know how many companies that we talked to who thought of data as a cost center. We got to manage our data like it's a
Right.
problem, as opposed to
Mhm.
going, wait a minute, this data is the lifeblood of this is the thing that separates us. So they need a mindset shift, and that's to start at the top.
Agreed. So we wanted to, make this practical and bring in someone who is on our extended team, Master B2B Executive Advisor. I want to bring in Howard Blumenthal, who is a longtime industry veteran. Howard, we're so happy you're here with us. He's a Master B2B Nexus expert advisor. Coincidentally, worked at both Motion and Advanced Auto Parts. The- and so knows his stuff. I mean, firsthand. I'm sure people, Howard, that are still in these businesses. And so, love to get your perspective on that. And then want to talk to you about, some of these AI things, because you're helping companies identify areas where they can drive ROI and practical results. But Howard, welcome. Tell us a little bit about your background and what you've done with your long and illustrious career.
Well, thank you, Brian and Andy. Pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me. So for the last 20 years, I've been leading B2B e-commerce, upgrades and replatforms and digital transformations for companies like you saw with Motion and Command and Advanced Auto Parts. And now I'm helping with the launch of Blumenthal Commerce, really helping people get through what I call this AI avalanche that we're dealing with right now. And everything you said before, I think, is pretty much right on the money. It's very reminiscent in many ways of the old when e-commerce started, or I think about, when mobile apps started, and there was a lot going on, and then a lot had to retrench and reorganize, but it cuts all parts of the business. So that's a fundamental difference. It's not just an isolated area. So it just adds to that sort of confusion and proliferation that we're seeing.
Well, and you came out with some, you have an interesting approach, Howard. So you're helping, maybe describe, you're helping companies think about, really how to best apply new AI to their business and actually drive results. And you've created a framework. Why don't you tell us maybe a little bit about that?
Sure. So, Andy, you brought it up before, is a lot of this is testing that's going on is happening at all different levels of the company. But what you find is you really need to have the foundations and certain core foundations set up so you can make these things scalable, so you can actually have them be effective. Some of them are, they're nothing extraordinary, but they all need attention, and often they've been neglected historically. One phrase I've used historically is that e-commerce uncovers all the sins of a company. Well, AI sort of does that on steroids.
Yeah.
And so you have to address that. And
Right.
Even more so because it cuts so many different departments. So the framework helps you think about any tools you're going to pick. So you can pick the right tools, but also make sure you're framing it the right way so that your tests and your rollouts can be successful.
So Howard, you got to say AI uncovers the sins of a company, but I'm sorry, e-commerce uncovers the sins of a company, but AI can send you to hell. That's what
true. That's it. I love it. I love it. That's a good addition.
So you said there are basically, you said there are some questions you need to ask yourself when you start these projects. We're going to put some on screen here. Why don't you walk us through and talk to us a little bit about what are the 4 key questions?
So there's always 4 core questions I start with. Are we really looking at the right workflows for AI? Are we measuring the right things? I'll go into these in a minute. Is our data ready? And do we have a governance plan? So real quick on these, AI works best when it focuses on things that have high volume and repetitive. So when you're looking at workflows, pick those as your originating areas, because that's where you're going to quickly gain, the best benefits of using AI. So if it's not, you shouldn't be doing it. Are we measuring the right things? Again, if I think back at e-commerce, do you remember hits? Everybody was touting all the hits that items had. This is about, and it's the same thing happening here. How many emails did it produce? How many graphics it created? The key here is about measuring outcomes.
Yeah.
And so you need to determine what are the outcomes you're looking for, and make sure that you actually have baselines set for those. Again, most people I talk to, these are often missing, or they're looking and measuring the wrong things. So really pick that up front. Is the data ready? This is the one you hear over and over again. This is the classic garbage in, garbage out. If your data is poor or it doesn't have a single source of truth, and you've got different companies doing it, AI just takes that, whatever is there, and runs with it. And that's where you get hallucinations and other issues. So you really need to focus, use AI to fix the data, clean the data before you do these other things, as a good example. And governance, which usually neglected or done as an afterthought. But AI changes the whole importance of governance and how it works. But what's there is, what is the structure? In a world that's exploding like AI, the governance model that typically works most successfully is what they call a combination of top-down and bottom-up. So something where the corporate gives a core structure and framework and some general rules, but gives the different departments the flexibility to experiment a lot. If you can work within that, so setting up the right governance and rules is really critical. And you should be doing that before you really start to embark on these tasks. So those are the 4.
Howard, the data component though, that's, I could imagine an e-com leader or digital leader saying, "Oh my gosh, my data, it's not ready. It's never going to be ready. It's never ready." We have a whole workshop on this at the summit in the afternoon on the second day. It's really just, if somebody feels confident that the data within the use case they're approaching with AI, that's really where you can focus your efforts, I think, is part of what you're saying. Is that right?
That's exactly it. Make sure that, again, if you're doing tests or you're going to roll in a particular, that's the data to focus on. Clean that data. Don't worry about cleaning everything, because you'll never get perfect.
Got it. So what's this AI scale trap stuff you talk about?
So this is the other when you talk about those results that you saw at the beginning of this conversation, just because you've tested doesn't mean things will necessarily work, even if you have all those other original frameworks. So scale traps I think about are, can the tool that you're working on actually scale, as an example? And what I mean by that is, is it able to handle exceptions? We live in a world of exceptions. And if you build an AI without that, how does it manage that? Does it refer to a person? Can it handle volume or speed? These are all big, important questions you can look at up front. The next one is things about, are you sharing the learning? We see a lot of these tests where you've got different departments doing similar tests with different data, different services, and no one's knowing exactly what's working, what's not. It's really critical when you're doing all this testing to find out what is working so you can all learn from that piece. One of my things that I really think is important, reminds me of the old mobile days, is the tool review plan. Just like people thought, hey, I build one mobile app and it's done. The mobile world keeps changing. You constantly have to refine it. That's the same thing here. Is you have something called AI drift, that these tend to go awry over time, or they use bad data, or the data gets old. You have to start to think about how you're planning. Are there ways to measure success or where problems are, or the number of complaints? So by building some of those up front, you can really save and make sure that you can scale or adjust for scale. And then the last one is, I call it the AI silos. You actually mentioned a version of that earlier in this call. But there are two types. There's the silos where different departments are doing different things and not learning. But the other is what I call AI creep. This is where people start, maybe you're a content writer, but now you think I can do graphics and do other things. And your graphic people think they can suddenly write programs and code. And what happens is we start to do AI creep, where we think we can do everything. And in a corporate structure, that actually makes us less productive and causes more problems.
Interesting.
Maybe we're missing. So we've got to learn, and part of the training and doing this as a corporation is we need to make sure that the right people are doing the right tasks, and we avoid this, it's not scope creep. I call it the AI creep.
But it actually calls into question what expertise is anymore, right?
Right.
Is it true expertise, or can I acquire AI expertise that's actually good enough to get me from point A to point B? But then there's another level of expertise above that, which requires a real expert.
Exactly. And that's maybe where the human in the loop piece comes in. Do you share that with the right people that can do that to make sure the brand guidelines are met, that you're not dealing with any legal issues, things like that can go awry very quickly. Even with code, the same thing. Are you following the guidelines there? Are they having the right security aspects? So the human in the loop has to look across departments, not just that action. And MIT was showing that what they were finding, this creep is a big enough problem that even when you gain efficiencies in the core task, people are spending so much time in these other areas that's filling in all the gap of the savings.
Wow. So Howard, where are people actually using AI? Like what areas are you, in terms of the functional areas? And you have these hot categories you've identified that have this Spider-Man thing. What the heck is that? Spider-Man role?
I like to think of AI as what I call the Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. and I think that gets to the governance, that gets to the rules, that gets to following these frameworks. But there are 4 areas where companies that are following those guidelines or following those frameworks are seeing success. And I think there are big opportunities. Search, you start to get into not just the data itself, but taking the data from your databases and from your PDFs and from your other content pages. So the semantic and vector search that really improves the ability to find and discover products. Could be a big area. So personalization. Personalization is another one. In B2B in particular, what we got to be careful of is not to follow the B2C trap. It's not about behavior so much as categories and reorders and cross sells and quotes, but doing that so it's personalized for those needs is where people are finding real wins in B2B. Pricing is another one.
Yeah.
There's always been good pricing tools. Have been using a lot of BI, but now they can add this extra layer of AI in, so that you start to get data accuracy and improve margins. And people are finding 2 to 5% margin improvements that are using the AI add-ins from a lot of those services. And then probably the least sexy is the ops AI, the supply chain piece, forecasting and demand and order exceptions. Those are the things that, again, it's that frequency we talked about earlier of action and repetitiveness, and ops AI is a great target for that. So those are the 4 areas that people are seeing the most wins today, and I would strongly encourage people to focus on those as a start.
Interesting. Well, yeah, no, that's really interesting, and I love how practical the approach is, Howard. I think people are looking for guidance in this, and that's part of your value as a master B2B Nexus advisor. Really, is to come in and help folks with these things, and in some cases, you get deeper in and do projects around this and such, and it's very exciting and wise of you, I think, as a professional consultant to get into that, because man, everybody's trying to figure this out. Let's get your reaction to this. We asked our community, what is the most important to B2B and AI? What is most important to B2B and AI investments in the short term, meaning the next 6 to 12 months? And we asked, is it a narrow ROI, broad experimentation? What was interesting is people said both. 56% said both broad experimentation and driving ROI are important. But within those two, ROI or broad experimentation got 3 times more. So 33% said that it's the most important versus 11% said driving ROI. So I think we're still in kind of a exploratory phase here. What's your reaction to this, Howard?
So I would agree with that. I think that the both is important. It's that top down, bottom up.
Right.
But there is so much happening now, is people need to get a grasp of it. They need to start using it so they can actually understand it, and even ask about how are our business processes going to change? How is our structure going to change? So I think playing and experimenting is a fundamental piece of the puzzle. And then you have to circle back. You can't do that forever. You have to start to pick and choose the items that'll give you that ROI.
But isn't this is literally reminiscent of what you said, because we've said the same thing you said independently, that this reminds us a lot of the same arguments about e-commerce back in the day. And when people first discovered e-commerce, there were people saying, well, if it can't drive ROI immediately, then it's a waste of time. It's another initiative we need to kill. And other people said, hey, let's just go play with it and see what happens, right? The answer was a little bit of both, but you want to get the timing right? You don't want to do too much ROI too early, because it won't. I mean, if you're spending money to build out an e-commerce infrastructure, you can't get an ROI right away, right? So it is similar.
It is similar. And remember, with e-commerce, everyone thought originally that it was a separate audience, a separate segment and market. And the real win became unified commerce, where it's more channels and so go back to the customer experience. But with AI, it's going to change. We start by copying what we're doing and finding ways to do it the same, but more efficiently. And then we look at how it's actually going to evolve the business. So go back to, how does this help the customer? How does this improve that experience? And you're generally, think of it from that approach.
Well, very wise words, Howard. We're up on time. We thank you so much for being a part of our Friday 15 this week, and for your wise words and being a part of our Master B2B Nexus program. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing all of you in Chicago.
That's right. All right. Well, Andy, we got a couple quick announcements here, and specifically Nexus. Howard is a part of our Master B2B Nexus program, which provides expert advice exclusively for B2B e-commerce practitioners. It is a paid service, but one that provides immediate feedback and guidance and reduces risks for executives looking to make really important decisions for their business. And so, Howard is part of that network of folks that's available if you're a part of that program. And so we thank Howard for his input. Andy, any final words before we wrap our Master BD, our Friday 15 for this week?
No, on this one, we will continue talking about this. I could go on for days. Right. But next week we'll have probably an update on this breaking news about the tariff story. So
yeah.
We'll talk more about that next week.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one to get into. Folks, thank you so much for joining. Remember to go onto our website to sign up for the Master B2B Summit in just a few weeks in Chicago. Thank you again to Howard, and we will see you on the next Friday 15.